All right, welcome everybody. Going to give folks a few moments to join and we'll get started. All right, looks like we've got a good amount of folks jumping in. So welcome everyone to today's webinar on maximizing project-based sales and innovative go-to-market strategies for building product manufacturers. We're very excited to bring you insights from two industry experts who are going to provide complementary perspectives on launching and marketing building envelope products effectively. Our webinar today is going to be structured in two main parts. First, we're going to hear from Stephen Gaynor, an expert in building product sales and marketing strategies. Stephen will guide us through the complexities of go-to-market strategies for building envelope products. He'll cover critical aspects such as project processes, sales structures, and channel models, with a particular focus on the challenges of reaching architects at key decision-making points. Following Stephen's presentation, we'll transition to our second speaker, Vardhan Mehta, co-founder and CEO of Acelab. Vardhan will introduce us to Acelab's innovative platform designed to address many of the challenges Stephen will have highlighted. He'll demonstrate how Acelab's solution can transform the way that building product manufacturers connect with architects and streamline the product selection process. After both presentations, we'll have a Q&A session where you can engage directly with our speakers. We encourage you to think about how the strategies and solutions presented today might apply to your own product lines and market approaches. You can use the Q&A throughout today's presentation to enter your questions as we go along. Our goal for this webinar is to provide you with actionable insights and introduce you to cutting-edge tools that can enhance your go-to-market strategies. We hope you'll come away with new ideas to improve your product launch processes and engage architect strategies. Without further ado, let's begin with Stephen Gaynor's presentation on go-to-market strategies for building envelope products. Stephen, whenever you're ready, feel free to go ahead and share your screen.
Thanks, Bo. All right, let's get my screen up here. All right, everybody can see my screen. Well, thank you, Bo. Thanks, Jen and Vardhan. Yeah, I'm again really excited to be able to share some of what I do on a daily basis. Especially, I get to talk a lot about the technical stuff on LinkedIn, but half of what we do is this, new markets or new product strategies and growth strategies with clients. So if you were here last time, you'll remember this is a 3-module series that we're doing, and we went through the sales and marketing strategies for your specific product, or specifically how your product determines your sales and marketing strategies the last time, and then we're on module 2 today, and then we'll talk about module 3 at the end of this. But just to review what we did a little bit last time, and for those of you who may not have been on it last time, we went through and really looked at different products and how they might affect what your strategy is in terms of sales and marketing, and that had to do with the attributes of that product and also how that product was incorporated on the building. So we went through visible products, and we went through invisible products and those more technical products. I also want to again share a shout out for my, I think, brilliant licensing opportunity here for Narwhal WRB membrane. Feel free to contact me afterwards if you want that. And then we went through the decision-making process and went through all the influencers that might be part of that decision-making process if you're selling into this commercial facade space. And finally, because there's so many influences in there, the question of how do you hone down on those targets, and what does that mean for your specific strategy? And then we did sort of flirt with these sales structures that are available to you depending on what your strategy was. And today we're really going to get into the project-based sales structures. Now, project-based sales structures are not made for every product in this space, right? If we're talking about commercial facades, there's all sorts of products fitting into all different places, and so there's different strategies. And we'll talk a little bit about that, but this is really about that project-based sales structure, because one of the things I find with my clients, especially new clients who are either transitioning from other countries or from more of a distributor product into a rain screen product that deserves a project-based sales structure, is that this is misunderstood. And so we're going to spend a little bit of time going through this today. So what I have here is a small piece of a presentation that I do for my clients when they're starting out here. And so we'll see these slides. This is part of what usually takes us about the better part of 2 days to go through. And we're gonna hit on these topics in the next 30 minutes or so. But you'll get a feel for some of these topics we go through. The first thing is, what is project-based sales? And I think, we start with the key features of what a project-based sales structure is. And that's really a focus on securing and managing sales through individual projects, often involving complex and high-value sales processes, right? And what does this mean? It means that we're going to be incorporating lead targeting into there, right? That's making sure that we are at the front end of this thing, not only for the projects, but for those companies and individuals who most fit into the projects that we're looking for. Then obviously some way of incorporating that project identification, customizing solutions, adding value, right? That's a big part of project-based sales. If we can add value through the sales process, and that's one of our differentiators, we're probably going to be going towards a project-based sales model. Then a big part of project-based sales is that cross-functional collaboration, right? It's not just showing a product and saying this product is probably good for you, or here's why you want to choose this product. It's probably getting folks that are installing that product, or midstream distributors, things like that, involved in that process to make sure that that solution is customized for that project. Obviously, project-based sales often involves more deeper relationship building because you're going through, you're consulting on projects. You have this sales cycle that involves many different stakeholders, right? So a more complex sales cycle. And then, when I say project management execution in here, a lot of folks think about those sort of really complex products where we have to go through shop drawings, we have to figure out field measurements, blah, blah, blah. But that's not just for those products, right? You might not have the shop drawing field measurement process in your internal sales process, but you for a project-based sales structure, or products that are appropriate for project-based sales structures, you're going to have some sort of project management and involvement during the construction process. And then obviously post-sale support, and not just to make sure that that everything's going all right, but also to maintain those relationships for the next project. Now, you see here I have a salesperson who's holding a shield and a key. And this is, for me, this is everything for project-based sales. Obviously, this might be a little bit of a silly picture above a blueprint here, but for me, it totally describes what we're looking at when we look at project-based sales. And it's the ability to identify and then defend your projects going through that process, right? And that you defend the projects not only by being there and trying to keep them on, but by adding value. So the advantages of going through project-based sales is that they're high value. Typically, it involves both high value for your end user, but it also means that they're much higher margin sales often. And then the customization ability to have specific solutions to a project that makes it nice for your end user. It also makes it harder for those let's say commoditized products, or the competitors that don't have this structure to sort of compete on providing the same solution. And then obviously you get stronger relationships here. Now the challenges is, because you're starting early on these projects, you're getting involved early, you have these long sales cycles, right? So you're not able to sort of pull levers, give a 10% discount, have a distributor take another container this month. You're really setting yourself up to have these longer sales cycles. So you're depending on broadening your opportunities to sort of even that wave out. It is resource intensive, and then you do have to focus a little bit more on your risk management here. And this is where I think a lot of folks, especially folks coming from Europe, they're so focused on the risk management, they don't realize there's easy ways to mitigate that in this sales process. Now, if we're not talking about project-based sales, and I just, everything else from here on out is talking about project-based sales, but I do want to identify when it doesn't make sense to have project-based sales structure, because it is resource intensive. It is, it does have these other costs. So, if your product maybe sells to commercial projects, but let's say it's a small quantity or very small dollar amount per project, right? That's often a case where, you and your competitors can't support a project-based sales structure. You're really competing on a different level. Often high volume, low margin products that don't support project-based sales structures. And then on the other side of that, if you have a high need but low competition product, right? If there's only you and another competitor in the space that can really service that need, you're probably less focused on taking projects away from one another and more focused on growing that opportunity for the market, right? So that's one of the one of the cases where you're not necessarily looking at low margin, but you are looking at more of that broader demand. And then, high reliance on brand, product, or service quality. And that's usually where you have these high volume, low margin products. You're really differentiating yourself. If you think about some of these products where the names of some of these products going through distribution, some of the big names, those big names are differentiating themselves because they have high quality supply chain. Everyone knows that they have consistency in their products, and that they can be there to service any needs when they arise. And that's really maybe where those products don't need a project-based sales structure. And in all of these things, if you don't have a project-based sales structure, you're probably spending more resources on sort of your digital marketing tools or your broad advertising and getting into that master specification. Right. That's and then once you're in the master specification, you're hoping your distribution network might be able to catch those projects on the other side. So getting back to project-based sales, what we're going to do is go through the project process, right? And I mean, you're going to hear me say project-based sales 100 more times in the next 20 minutes. So get used to it. But it's important because this really is about following the project process and having someone there to lead through this. And I think we're going to start with the architect. Actually, we're going to talk mainly about the architect today, and we're going to start with that schematic design. This is really where the concept of the building is starting. And maybe Vardhan, you can talk a little bit about just what's happening from an architectural standpoint when they're first starting the schematic design. In terms of that design process.
Yeah, so it's all about the design intent, right? It's all big picture. It's really sort of like understanding the vision of the client, and then also sort of like tying that back with like domain expertise as an architect, as an influencer on the project, to what would be the systems that end up in the project. So instead of all the pieces that might go into a glazing assembly or a rain screen, the idea would be to specify like what might be the envelope, what does that look like, and then really like focus on like the form and function and program more than the specifics at this stage.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and that's, I mean, for me, what I teach my manufacturers at this stage is that really you're just providing ways that your material can bring that design to life, right? And so there might be some basic budgeting tools so that the architect can say, okay, where am I relative to using one material versus the other? But really, it's all about that how the material affects the design here. So we got our first poll here, and I think you'll see that come up on your screen momentarily. There we go. And really, it's when designers are looking for materials that match what they want to express, how do we make sure that that your product is top of mind? Now, obviously, we have one answer on there that's wrong, but the three other answers are something that I often come across to some extent and are usually used to some extent in strategy. So we're going to see how everyone answers here. I'm going to rely on thoughts and prayers. Yeah. All right. Can I move on here? What do we have? There we go. Strategically partner with services that architects use on the front end. That's a great answer. I think that maybe some of these other answers came from salespeople that are maybe frustrated with, or at least the first one. But you know, the second one here, you know, multiple employees located in every city. I think, yeah, I'm going to hit on that at the end, and I think that's a key part. If you're already there, you probably have something very close to a focused project-based sales structure. All right, let's go to the next slide here. So the next stage is design development, and in this stage, you know, the architect is really starting to get into the details. You know, we had our concept. We said, okay, we chose some cladding product to express it. We chose some other products to express our design, and now we're starting to get into the details. How do we make this have the tactile look we were looking for? How do we bump up one part of this, whatever that is? We're starting to look at the attachment system. We're starting to look at some parts of that detailing afterwards. And this is really where manufacturers need to be consulting at probably some of the most detailed levels to make sure that not only that the architect is getting everything they need, that those details are right, but also that those details reflect what you know, whatever your product is. And so in this process, you know, you have obviously your details. You might even have some amount of involvement from your channel structure beyond that to say, okay, you know, we know that we can provide these details. Let's get some input from the installer on, you know, which one of these is less expensive, more expensive if we have different options. And then we once most of that is taken care of, then we're in the sort of the development of the CDs and getting to 100% CDs, and that's where I think for me as a manufacturer, I'm thinking about how am I defending what I just put into place in the last two, right? And that's not just trying to keep others out. It's trying to see when we need more value, how can I provide more value? And often that means you should have some version of value engineering, a value engineering solution where you could value engineer yourself, you know, if that's needed, right? I think that, you know, every architect, every specifier wants the best solution, but then we get into these constraints, and the question is, do you have something that can still serve the design intent, but comes in at a lower cost here? Maybe it's not the most ideal solution, but it's still keeping in line with what we're thinking. And I think, Vardhan, maybe we can talk about this for a second. You know, in terms of that, you know, at this stage before we're bidding it, what are the pressures that you have as an architect? You're starting to get either the CM or the GC involved. What is that like in terms of re-looking at your design and the products?
I mean, this stage, you know, on any project, regardless of type, geography, team structure, probably takes the most time on a project. And the reason for that is it's where the realities start to hit the architect and every other stakeholder. So here's where you're trying to sort of reconcile these worlds of, you know, your design intent, the vision, the requirements on the project, and then also the realities of the timeline or schedules and the budget. And so I think like this is again where folks who have already added value in the previous stages like SD or DD, those are the people who are trusted the most. Anybody else who's trying to enter the architect's office or the project at that in this stage, it's really difficult. The architect already has their back against the wall for multiple things and deadlines and deliverables. And you know, it's really hard for an architect unless they're almost like forced to entertain any type of new solution at this stage and beyond.
Yeah, that's good input, and I mean that's another reason why if you have that value engineering solution available for yourself, you're already working with them. You can feed that right in to service those pressures, so they don't have to start working with a new partner. Then we get into the bidding stage, and this is really where for me I see a lot of manufacturers that are fairly weak when it comes to incorporating this side of the sales process into their sales. They have a big focus on the architects and making sure that the product is in the spec, but then it goes out to bid, and we don't know who's bidding, and we don't know what they're bidding. We want to make sure that we can lock this up. And for me, this process starts well before the project. This is for my clients. We're talking about saying, okay, what markets are important to us? How do we set up these networks? How do we promote these networks on a project? You know, when our architectural salesperson is in there, how do we arm them with names that should go onto the bid list? You know, that should be transferred to the GCs that are bidding this, so that we know not only do we have installers that are bidding, you know, our products, but they know how to bid it, right? And then the construction process. And I want to get into this a little bit. You know, for a lot of products or manufacturers, we see that the salesperson, once this bidding happens and we get awarded, the salesperson's gone. They're going on to the next thing, because if you think about it, that seems to be the most efficient structure, right? The salesperson landed it, now it gets passed to project management or fulfillment or whatever, and the salesperson is on the outside. Now, you know, what I say is that we really need to have, yes, obviously that transition happens. We really need to have that salesperson still maintaining the relationship with the architect on this project, still checking in as if they were following up on the project before, when they were seeing where the different stages were happening, and making sure that the architect, you know, the architect's needs, or at least their wants, are being listened to here throughout the construction process. Because I think what we'll see during the construction process is that often other people are making decisions. Sometimes the architect is aware of them, sometimes they're not, sometimes they get frustrated by them. And it's helpful to have that relationship where you can sort of connect those dots. And I don't want to get into every stage here. You know, this is part of, for new clients, we go through each of these, and you might see that some of these aren't applicable to your product. This is, you know, you might see that these initial stages are really for those, like, you know, glazing and sheet metal and cladding products, and then you know, some of these other ones we come back together on. But essentially, you know, each of these phases are additional opportunities for us to maintain our relationship with both the architect and our contractor network. So, you know, you have that contract finalization phase where, you know, you're negotiating terms. Really, it's a PM estimator internally that's dealing with this. Then your shop drawings, and you might be doing, you know, I don't know how many manufacturers out there know what other people are doing in the market. But I would say, you know, it doesn't matter whether you're servicing these, if you need these drafting services in-house, it doesn't matter whether you're servicing these, you know, really in-house, you have a third party, whatever. What matters is how you're transferring that to the customer. And we see all variations of that throughout the industry. Then you have field measurements, and I don't want to get into this. This is changing rapidly as we see new tools in the market. We could have a whole hour on what's happening with field measurements in our industry today. Production release, fabrication. For those of you who haven't gone through the product process where you have to modify that product off of the job site before it gets onto the job site, all of these are foreign to you, but each of these are really big deals for those folks who actually have to go through this, and they have pitfalls that are prevalent if you're not managing this tight and successfully. Then we get back to delivery and installation, and this is where all products come to the same place, right? Your product gets delivered to site, whether it's modified offsite or not, whether it's just coming in bags and buckets and rolls. It gets to the job site, and somebody, you know, somebody then has to install it. And you know, the question is, what kind of support do we have internally for those folks that are installing this? And for me, this is sort of a two-sided value, right? We need to make sure that our products are going up correctly, right? So there has to be some sort of oversight, even if we are not directly transacting with the installers. So maybe a channel partner has to provide that oversight, something like that, where we're saying, okay, at least we're mitigating our risk a little bit of this going up incorrectly. The other part of this is it's a huge opportunity to build and maintain relationships with the dark side of the sales process, which are the installers, right? Because we're so focused on the architect, the salesperson may have been told to go find the next project, but we have an opportunity to provide support here and build relationships with folks who need it from you, and ultimately who are making decisions on the next project, after that specification comes out. So for me, this delivery and job site support is a big part of our sales process, not just demand fulfillment. And then finally, close out. If we're thinking about this project process as a whole, one of the things I want to do is I want to have an opportunity both to say we're done here, right? We provided everything we think we should have provided. We want to make sure that you also agree we are done here, and so it really puts a nice end to that project, and then it also sets up the conversation for the next project. It's an opportunity to say, here's what we provided, sort of an overview of what we did, and show the value you provide in that project, as all the stakeholders on this project are now looking to their next project also, right? So you should have some sort of a closeout package, even if it's something minor, just warranty documents and maybe a maintenance document, whatever that is, some sort of a closeout package that also provides an overview of the product or the project and what you did on it. And that helps to really sort of start the conversation for the next project. Now, with all of that, let me see where we are in time. So, with all of that, we have to look at how we manage that, right? And so for my clients, we're going through all the routes to market that are used in this industry. What I wanted to do was just hit on one of them that really talks to the fact that we have to manage this process and sort of be deliberate about it. Because what I see often is that when we're talking about routes to market, the way that your product gets to the wall, we have this process. We don't have consistent and sort of focused approaches when it comes to this. We have different models that folks use, and then we start to drift from there. Often we'll have manufacturers coming in saying, we want to capture every sale with every opportunity. And this is really the structure you see when that happens. It's an opportunity to hit every stakeholder in the market, or everyone who could possibly sell your product in the market. But obviously, if you look at this, not only is it really freaking hard to manage this, but also you're creating a whole bunch of conflicts in here. And so, this goes back to, we need to make deliberate choices about our channels to market so that we can make more efficient choices about our sales channels. And just looking at a typical sales channel map when we're talking about these the folks that are both specifying this and our transactional customer, typically we have, if we're not going through a typical distributor network, we have this sort of process where your architectural sales rep is focusing on your specification, but it's also focusing on getting those installers involved with whatever your installation training program is. And then if you do have a distribution network, you often have your distributor sales rep that is often hitting on installers. And if you have this network right now and your distributor sales rep is only taking distributors out to lunch and making sure you have shelf space, or at least relationships with distributors, and they're not hitting on installers, you're definitely missing an opportunity there. You're allowing everything your architectural reps are doing to go to sort of a dark place. We got the next poll here. So is your sales and route to market strategy designed for project-based sales or just sales to people doing projects? Please choose one. I'm not going to read through all these, but you see we have another one that was intended to be funny. Choice D, and if you choose that, I mean, honestly, I've come into a few companies that actually use that as their strategies. Is that we need sales this quarter, and so whatever comes to us, we are on. All right. How'd we do? Yeah, we're in the middle here. It's sort of what I expected. It also gives me good business opportunities. But that's I mean, that's what I see in most places, that we sort of have a strategy. We're doing a pretty good job, but we're not too strict about it. All right. So just to sort of close this up, I just want to hit on specifically what does it take, identifying if you have a project-based sales structure, and then what that means. So I mean, my first question is, if you're looking at your structure, can you categorize your people as expert consultants, or are they just knowledgeable product experts? Both of these are good things, but for different structures, right? In the sales process, are you set up to identify, land, and defend project specifications, or are you focused on education relationship management targets that make decisions on for decision makers on projects? And then for marketing, is your strategy focused on actually catching those opportunities, or is it focused on mind share and awareness? And this gets you right into where you guys land today. Do we really have a project-based sales structure if we need it? Now, what does that mean to actually implement a project-based sales structure? And this goes back to me. Obviously, you see Dwight here. Dwight, to me, is in this scene is if you're familiar with Office or The Office, then you've probably seen this scene where he is working at Staples, and he says to this customer, do you need anything? And she says, no, I'm good. And he says, I will be right here for basically as long as you need me to be. And in that case, this is very much like that first salesperson we put up with the shield, right? Is really going through and identifying the opportunity and defending it all the way to the sale. And so for that, you need local sales support in key strategic areas, right? And this doesn't mean every city across the country. It means local in key strategic areas. You also need to have, an opportunity to identify early, project opportunities, right? So are your tools and activities, your key activities set up to do that? And then for me, one of the hardest things to do for salespeople is to actively weed out opportunities that are low probability opportunities, right? Because if we do have a project-based sales structure, it is resource intensive. It's much more expensive to operate. So we need to be looking at opportunities where we have the highest probability of getting through, and spending less time on those opportunities where we have low probabilities. And that's all about targeting. And then, do we have the tools to closely track projects? And then finally, are we successfully transitioning these projects throughout our organization? And that's one of the things that I see over and over again, is we might have a great architectural sales team, and as it goes through the organization, we lose those sales because we don't have the ability to defend it as it goes through the organization. Now, if you're going to change from one to the other, I mean, the bad news is it's not an easy transition, and eventually you figure out that every department has to adapt to some amount. I'm not going to get deep into that, but I will tell you that is the case in every company that I've been through this with. The good news is you're not alone. Companies have done this before successfully, and you have more tools available than ever before to help you out with that process. Now we have our last poll here. Can you identify marketing tactics tools that are primarily designed to produce specific project leads rather than relationship leads or mind share? This is interesting because it's something that I've had to learn throughout my really much more as a consultant, but also later in my career when I was an employee. Now, there's different opportunities to use both targeted marketing and broad marketing in different spaces, and they have different roles to play, and you should know what they are. All right, do we have? Boom, specification Acelab, look at that. And then lunch and learns. This is pretty much where I expected. I think for the most part, these are the right answers. There's some variation here, and depending on your product, there might be some of these other opportunities for actually identifying specific projects, but this is exactly where I expected it to land. All right. So just to finish up here, this was the end of module 2. I hope this was useful in terms of getting a view into project-based sales structures. And the next one is actually identifying common channel structures, that route to market that competitors are using in this space. We're going to do that later this year. So that is it. I hope this was useful. And my contact information is down there. Vardhan, we're going to pass it to you for the next part.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Stephen. So Stephen has highlighted the complexities of the building product ecosystem and how manufacturers can optimize their go-to-market internally to reach architects at crucial decision-making points. So now let's explore how technology is reshaping this landscape of how manufacturers and architects collaborate. I'd love to introduce Vardhan Mehta, co-founder and CEO of Acelab, who will share insights on the future of architectural product selection and specification.
Thanks so much. All right. Well, happy Friday. I'm Vardhan. I'm a second-gen architect. Used to practice in New York at a top 10 architecture firm where I designed projects for the State Department, which were US embassies around the world, and institutional projects for MIT and Yale. During my time in practice, for better or worse, most of my time I spent on specifications, material selection, research, working with manufacturers, and so on. And so really started to understand the workflow and the process, and realized that there were a lot of opportunities for deeper engagement and relationships. And so, with Stephen, with all the insights Stephen shared, I think those are incredible ways for manufacturers to optimize for project-based sales structures internally and to deliver that value also externally. But now I'm going to focus from the standpoint of an architect and the specification workflow of how manufacturers can enhance the project-based sales structures externally using new strategies and tools and so on, especially digitally. So I'm going to first just start off with, just introducing the agenda here quickly. So first, we're just going to talk about the challenges that most architects experience throughout the specification workflow. And then from there, we're going to talk a little bit more about how high-value project-based connections and relationships. And then from there, I'm going to introduce the material hub, which is something that the team of architects at Acelab have been developing, and now we have it in the hands of some of the top ENR 100 firms, including Aecon, Raymond, Nelson Worldwide, and KPF, as a way to standardize all of the material decision making. So, the big reason, obviously, why manufacturers, dealer installers, reps, love architects and architecture firms is for the fact that through how we manage the materials on a project and at the architecture firm, architects profoundly influence the project outcomes. And so 3 out of 4 times an architect is recommending a product on a project, it ends up being bought. And that obviously happens through the specification workflow. But the reality as an architect of this process and the outcomes of the process is that architects most of the time go with what they know. And we're doing that usually due to a lack of knowledge, awareness, resources, or time, or all of the above. And so, there's a firm library which every architect had in the office for a long time, but nobody likes to manage or upkeep. You don't get paid to make sure that all the information in the firm library is most up to date and refreshed all the time. There's all of these like brochures and files related to a project historically, that live somewhere on the local servers that nobody likes to access or refer to. Suites and other strategies like that, which have worked for manufacturers, maybe like 30, 40, 50 years ago are just non-existent at the moment. And so the big challenge for architects at the moment is really trying to figure out how to get access to the knowledge, awareness, resources you need at the right stage in the project. And what now on the other side for manufacturers, the barrier to enter a project through project-based sales is really finding architects when they're actively making product decisions, which, as Stephen alluded to earlier, we talked about starts as early as schematic design. That's when an architect is already starting to engage with the product experts or the consultants that they trust the most bring them into the project. And really like, that's an opportunity for manufacturers to add value. But obviously the challenge there is, being able to find that, identify that. Who are the architects? What are the projects? What stage are the projects in? And here's some feedback now. At this point, I've interviewed maybe over 100 or so different manufacturers and across the sales and marketing teams. Here's the feedback about 4 channels we've heard over and over again. With trade shows, hard to obviously identify which of the attendees are actively specifying. Lunch and learns, no way to know who will be in the room or if they have the projects that might be a good fit for manufacturers. Master spec, spec link, ARCAD, the repositories online. The architects who are already using them, they keep specifying you, but hard to develop new relationships there. And then with the lead gen tools, we've heard that they're often too late. It's the project is out to bid already, and it's hard to influence the project or the architect at that time. But like as an architect, the reality is early stage collaboration is equally valuable for manufacturers and for architects. Because as an architect, my selfish interest in that is I will have a trusted resource from the get-go. So if I have a question, instead of having to search online or through multiple sources of information, I'm going to have a go-to guide and advisor through the process. Now, the challenge for architects, obviously, on the other side is like, you can't really maintain an advisor for every single segment or a vertical across the building landscape. And so in this case, the 4 areas that we've identified, which both sides need to exchange in order to be helpful to each other and to drive the project, is really, well, first, the architect details, manufacturers need that to know exactly who are the people they need to be adding value with and speaking to at the firm. What are the project details? What's the name? What's the location? What's the phase it's in? What's the building type and the budget? If you guys make different types of product offerings, which are the products that architects are most interested in or need help with or need support with? And then like, what actually is the next step? So if an architect is engaging with you or inquiring for support, do they need price quotes, lead times, and information about installation, want to discuss a project, literature, samples, and so on? And then when you have these 4, that adds up to, this data is almost like the precursor to a relationship where it can be equally valuable for both sides. Now, the reality with the specification workflow at the moment is that it's incredibly scattered and disconnected. Architects are using one tool or a method for initial research, and something else to collaborate with reps or seek out reps, and then something else to actually document the decision with with schedules or specs and so on. So the 3 big challenges for any architecture firm high level at the moment is lack of expertise and knowledge on demand. And now, with all the digital tools and services, obviously the attention spans are shrinking. Architects are expecting that help and that value right away, yesterday, as soon as they need it. Being able to manage all the knowledge at the firm across all the projects that have been done in the past, why something was reviewed, why it was selected or not selected, all of those are really big insights that architects are really struggling to maintain in one centralized place. And then most of the documentation still happening in this stage is very manual and messy. But as you guys might know, there's a dire shortage of technically sound folks at architecture firms at the moment. So this becomes really challenging. And then, the outcome is, let's just repeat what we've already done in the past. Now, the challenges for manufacturers here is like, if you can't identify the project early on, how will you be able to influence the design or add value into that design? If you can't really track after the initial support where the project is, what status is the project in, it's really hard for you to continue adding value throughout the different stages. And then if you don't really know, like if you actually made it into the final document, it's hard to defend it, hard to retain it for repeat specifications. So with that, we developed the material hub. And the idea was, we really need integration in this industry. Instead of having to use half a dozen different tools and ways of interacting between the 2 sides, really having one centralized play to manage all the material decision-making all the way from initial search to specification. So I'm going to now show you guys a quick view of how that works. So, as we're onboarding architects into this program, this is still in beta stage. We'll be launching this soon in about 30 to 60 days, and we're in the process of signing up some founding partnerships both on the architect and manufacturer side. So this is, in a way, it's a sneak peek of what will be launched soon as the material hub. But we've essentially found a way to digitize the firm library, add in information about every single manufacturer as the foundation of very structured data into Acelab. And when architects are joining us, they're actually supplying us all of their specifications from the past 10 years at the firm, which we are organizing for them into a firm library. And then we're standing up their firm library on the platform. And when we do that, we learn a lot about the specifications that have taken place in the past. And then we use that as an opportunity to recommend the architect healthier alternatives or things that can help them to optimize on the cost, availability, sustainability, aesthetics, design optionality, and so on. The value for manufacturers here is that when an architect is adding a product into their firm library, like in this case, the example is of schedules, the architect is also choosing what is the status of the product. Has it been approved by the client? Was this already selected? Has it been approved as an alternate or equal? Was this not selected, and so on? And then all this other information that architects have historically had to upkeep in their firm libraries or manage manually, we are automating all of that. So all of this information is being sourced from Acelab's database. It integrates with their Revit files and their BIM. So we automatically are able to detect what BIM families for which manufacturers have been included in the Revit file. And we show them all the information related to the dimensions and room numbers and other tags that we're importing from that Revit file. We're also showing them the CSI master format sections. Here, the architects have an ability to choose the design options that are the most relevant to them. They can add notes. So if there was any feedback in the past for a project or for a material, related to the quality of support that they received, good or bad, or a price code that they received, or some issue they had with installation, architects can record that in one central place, and architects seem to be really enjoying that flexibility. And then being able to see a record of like every single time the project was used in the past at the firm, so that it's easy to reference when you're starting up a new project based on the last reference. You can already sort of go into that and see that on your firm library in Acelab. And then finally, the most important thing here is the ability to contact reps right away. As soon as you need help, as soon as you want to discuss a project, ask for feedback on a detail, want to get their initial thoughts when you're still in SD or DD. And from like a project-based sales standpoint, for manufacturers, they receive, as soon as the architect is reaching out, you receive all the information that's on the left over here. So that's the name of the project, its location, what phase it's in, what's the building type, and the budget. And then lastly, I think the big value here is also for those like architecture firms which have, say, multiple offices throughout the US and really struggle to maintain their specifications across those office locations. So in this case, it's easy for them to be able to tag those by the practice area. We have our standard specifications for the commercial stuff or for institutional projects or by the office location. And then all the comments over here get saved as well. Now, as soon as the architect is taking an action on the platform related to a product or a manufacturer, manufacturers on the other side gain complete visibility so that if they need to provide some clarification to the architect, they have the ability to do so directly from the platform. I'll pause here and hand it over to Bo to see if any of our attendees have a question regarding all the material we shared so far across Stephen and myself.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, reminder to anyone who maybe didn't submit a question, there should be a Q&A box at the bottom, so feel free to enter any questions that you might have for our speakers there, and we will get to some of those live. If we don't get to your question live, we'll have a record for that. We can follow up after today's event. All right, let's start off here, and I think this one's addressed for Vardhan. Could you elaborate a little bit on how Acelab's platform addresses the challenge of timing in reaching architects at key decision-making points?
Yeah, so I think most of the time, as an architect, our interaction with manufacturers is one of two things historically. One is manufacturers reaching out through cold emails or cold calls, essentially spamming us when we don't actually have a need for that, or sometimes we don't even have a pre-existing relationship. Or on the other times, it's lunch and learns, which is very good and super educational, but then it's hard to keep all of that in mind when you actually need to specify a system like that. And so we decided to actually flip that switch and say, architects need an easy way to reach any manufacturer that's in the US through one centralized place, as opposed to having to fill out hundreds of forms or having to click on their own websites, manufacturers' own websites. One single place where architects can request anything that they want from a manufacturer. And the local rep, which again, to Stephen's point, is super important, because you need somebody who can actually help you and not just help high level to redirect you to some PDF or brochure or source of information that you have to invest even more time in understanding. You need somebody who's like a true domain expert, not just in the products, but the code and so on, all the issues relevant locally. So that's what we built with Acelab, where there's an easy way for architects to be able to request that from one platform. And then on the other side, manufacturers can see the details of the request. Stephen also mentioned like being able to weed out requests which aren't relevant as a manufacturer or may not be the right fit for you, and you can just respectfully decline that request from the architect.
Awesome. All right. Next up, what advice do you have for manufacturers looking to expand into either new geographical markets or new product categories?
Stephen, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, I think depending on the market, the first thing is always whether you have the product is appropriate for that market, right? So, if you're expanding to the U.S., you really need to figure out, are we even coming from the same climate zones? From let's say we're going to Europe and then we want to go into Minneapolis and Chicago. Those are super harsh environments compared to where you're coming from. So, do we have the appropriate sort of testing to show where we are? And then it's about what is the culture in that market? And that's the biggest question for me is, are we addressing the right stakeholders in the right way, right? I was just talking to someone literally yesterday who's coming over from Europe and was saying, oh, our general contractors, or the version of the general contractors, they're talking about basically buy our product and then tell someone to use it. That's not going to be the model that's going to work here, right? And so it's figuring out both the technically whether your product's technically appropriate and whether you have the appropriate approach for those stakeholders. And so for architects, we just went through everything it takes for architects in the U.S., which is a different thing than you would do even in Canada, but definitely in Europe, right?
All right, cool. Next one. What strategies do you recommend for manufacturers that are looking to differentiate their products, especially when targeting high-profile architectural projects?
Yeah, I think we covered this a little bit in the last module. The for me, it starts with it always starts with how can I protect your design, and how can I tell you that that we've got the knowledge to keep you covered in terms of risk, right? And so if it's something visual, then you're definitely going much more towards sort of we can protect your design. If you have the hidden products, there's some hidden products that do have to do with protecting the design, right? If you have an attachment system that can go under multiple different claddings, and you don't have to worry, but you can sort of use the same details, then the design becomes more flexible for them, and they can protect that a little more. The the other part of it is if you have a really technical product, then it's about we know the codes, we know how this should be put up, we know this project, the way it's built, this is how the details should happen. That's for me, that's sort of the differentiator there.
And as an architect, I will selfishly add that all I want to know is how can you help me overcome a challenge on the project? I'm not that interested in the history of the company or every single product that's available in your suite. I just want to know, how can you help me optimize the project outcome based on any criteria that's relevant to the project team? It could be the architect itself, or it could be the owner, it could be the contractors and so on. But that's what I think as an architect, like that's like the first thing I would want to know, so that I maintain my interest, or I gain interest in a new product that I don't really have experience with in the past.
Mhm. All right, let's see. This might be a longer topic than we have for 5 minutes, but I think would be good to get some kind of high-level insights on. How do you see AI and machine learning impacting the future of building product selection and specification processes?
I mean, why don't you take that?
Yeah. Actually, I'll quickly show something that we have in beta mode as a part of the Material Hub, which is brand new. Essentially, I mean, to backtrack a little bit, the problem in our industry right now is the folks that are true experts, in-house, internally at architecture firms that have all of this expertise, they are either retiring or they're no longer interested in doing that work. And for the new generation of architects, it seems like everybody's only interested on the design side. Nobody wants to go into the technical or the specification realm of things. And so I think one of the projects which I'm personally most excited about that we've been working on with the top specifiers, spec writers in the country, is to develop a way to automate that intelligence, not to the extent that it's you can just like write a spec sheet with it, but it's a great way to sift through, instead of hundreds of products, go down to, let's say, the top 3 that may be the most relevant based on the context of the project. So I'm gonna share my screen really quickly here. Oops. Oh, here. Do you guys see my screen okay?
Yes.
Yeah, so this is, we don't really have a name for this yet. We're still doing the testing, as I mentioned, with a few of these super user architecture firms on the platform. But what we're doing here is like asking the architects, what are you optimizing your product selection or research for? And then based on that, we're supplying them recommendations. And then I think this is really what I see as the step 1. I think the step 2 is based on whatever the architect actually needs, if there's a way that you can utilize AI to route them to the right individual on the other side from the manufacturer. Anything to add to that, Stephen?
No, I mean, I'm excited. I've seen the first sort of really broad, very successful marketing effort I was part of was back in 2006, where the company I was with was trying to just increase their mind share, right? Because that's what we had available to us at that point, which was that was the metric, right? And we had an amazing marketing manager who she did an amazing job over the next 3 to 5 years of getting exactly the target we wanted to do. And it was all through, as targeted as we could do at the time. But what I'm relying on now is often the most sort of targeted, how do we get to the architects as there's activity there, and obviously Acelab plays into this, targeted digital marketing plays into this, but I imagine that AI will be able to sort of capture that, hey, this connection needs to happen, much more quickly now, right? And I've seen, going from the 2006 initiative through what I've been doing with both employers and clients, I've seen how technology has helped us get much more efficient at saying, okay, the architect's not going to waste time, we're not going to waste time, we know we need to make a connection. I think for me, I'm excited to see how AI affects that digital marketing.
Right.
All right, awesome. I think that is all we have time for today. But as you're leaving today's webinar, there's going to be a quick post-event survey. If you have some time to fill that out, you can choose to sign up for a free demo with Acelab if you're interested in learning some more. And you can also enter any questions that you might have for our speakers to there as well. Thank you so much for everyone who came out today. Thank you, Steve.
Have a great weekend. Take care. Bye.
Bye now.